of the Kabbalah, all the secrets of Musar, of personal development, growth, getting close to God. And the Ramchal is the master of organization and a systematic program. In other words, everything is goals, sub-goals, minor goals. The step that you take, each thing leads to the next stage. It's a program, it's a workout, a spiritual workout. And the first character that we're working on is called, Zehirut, which means being careful, being aware, paying attention, thinking before you're doing. What it means is, it's basically a person that thinks, a person that the wisdom of your life guides your life. Okay? We want to develop a person who thinks before he does. Okay? In other words, all of your actions are an outcome of a thought that preceded to that action. That's what it means to be a person that is Zahir. Okay? So, obviously, the Torah helps a person become this type of person. And this chapter began by saying that if you want to become a careful person, just learn Torah. So why are we learning this book, Messilat Yesharim, if all we have to do is just learn any other Torah? The answer is, it will take you, like the doctor says to you, you want to be healthy? Do exercise, sleep well, eat well. That's enough. That's the medication. That's my prescription. But then sometimes you have a problem, you need antibiotics. You need to go into the detail and deal with the issue. So this is, very laser focused on how do I develop my character. How do I develop this, like you said, a person that thinks before he does, that the wisdom of the Torah, wisdom guides your life. So we said the Ramchal, being the master of organization, he breaks everything down to a program. And this is the same program for each one of the characters that we're working on in this book. This book has 9 character traits. And at the finale, if you have mastered these 9 character traits, you have built the vessel that God can pour in it, what's called Ruach HaKodesh. The highest spiritual level that a person can reach is, Ruach means wind, Kodesh means holiness, that you are driven, you are basically from inside, you are pulled towards positivity, towards godliness, just because, and that's the highest spiritual level a person can reach. One level above Ruach HaKodesh is prophecy. We don't have prophecy today, but we do have Ruach HaKodesh. Okay, everyone understands till now. So now let's talk about the layout. And again, it's important to understand the layout because it's each chapter, each character has these 4 parts. What are the 4 parts? Part number 1 is Klal, overview. And this is an important lesson for all of Torah learning. When you're going to sit and learn some topic, don't jump in and start talking about the details. First, understand the overview. What are the concepts? What are the overview? What's the general idea? What are the conclusions? Understand the big picture. But it's not enough to just understand the big picture. What do you need? What's the next step? Is the prat. And that is, what do I have to do to acquire? I understand in general what is being careful and paying attention, and how do I make wisdom and closest to God guide my life. I understand that in general. We explained why we don't, and that was the first part of Zehirut. Second part of Zehirut was the details. What do I have to do? Step by step, what do I need to do? It's not enough to know in general. And then number 3. Number 3 is where we're at now, is motivation. You could know in general, you could know exactly what you have to do, but you don't do it. Why? You could say it by heart. I need to be doing exercise. Why aren't you doing it? But you know it and you believe it and you understand it, but why aren't you doing it? The answer is motivation. Okay? The motivation is split to 3 parts, and we'll get there in a minute. And the last step is maintenance and upkeep. Just because you understood something in general, you knew what you had to do, you motivate yourself to do it, you did it. Now, if you don't do maintenance and upkeep, you will lose it. And this is the structure for the whole book. For each chapter has these 4 parts. It's very important to understand that. We're right now in the 3rd part, is motivation. The motivation, the Ramchal breaks it down to 3 general personality types. In other words, you can't educate the way we know today. They educate in masses. They educate everyone the same thing. They basically make an average on what the students should know at 1st grade, and based on that, we teach a certain method, right? The teacher teaches a frontal teaching, but there's some kids learn, more by hearing. Other people learn more by listening, by writing. There's many different ways. Ramchal is teaching us chanoch l'nar al pi darko. You have to educate. There's no one rule on how to educate. You need to understand who is the child or the person that is sitting before you, or here what we're discussing. Who am I? What will motivate me? It says in the Gemara, Yafa makat maldut belibo shel adam mi 400 malkiyot. It's better if one person takes something to heart than 400 lashes. In other words, understand it. But if a person chooses to understand it, if a person opens his heart and lets the message come in, that's worth everything in the world. So you need to know who you are. So last class, we spoke about these 2 personality types. I'll go over it again briefly so you could understand. We spoke about that. We finished these 2 personality types, and we're at the 3rd one. The first personality type is called Shlemei Hadat. These are people that the only thing that interests them, these are very royal people. These are people that they're not looking for reward. They're just, all they want to do it, they want to do it for the sake of God. So for that, you need to learn that. How do you motivate people that are not doing it for reward? They're just doing it because they want to be close to God, and because they're idealistic, and because they want perfection. They want things to be perfect. They're idealistic. Those people, okay? And again, we're not talking about people who act that way, because it's called Shlemei Hadat. They have this personality in their dat, in their mind. Doesn't mean that their actions, they're not Shlemei HaMaaseh, they're Shlemei Hadat. Theoretically, this is who they are. And we're not giving grades who's better or worse. It's just who a person is. So we said in last class, if you are part of the Shlemei Hadat, the way to motivate yourself is learn the book Orot HaTshuva. If you learn the book Orot HaTshuva, Rav Kook wrote a whole book for motivation for people that are idealistic, that are Shlemei Hadat. It doesn't talk about punishment. It only talks about closeness to God and your relationship and your Ahavat Hashem. And that's the first people. The other people, they're called Pchutim. What are Pchutim? We said these are people who, what motivates them is respect. They're looking for a spiritual reward. So basically, you could say, if you wanted to split this group up, these 2, the first 2, what interests them is other way around. These 2 are actually similar. This one doesn't want reward, he just wants to do it for the sake of God. We spoke about that. These 2, they want reward. But this person, the Pchutim, they want reward, spiritual reward. They want respect, they want Olam Haba, they want to feel, I want to do Torah because I feel like it gives me purpose, it gives me a feeling that I'm doing good. It makes me feel satisfaction in my life. That's okay. You're doing it to feel, that I have meaning in my life and purpose. That's great. And the next world and kavod. What's kavod? What is respect? I can't touch it. I can't use it to buy anything at the store. But they want reward, and it's a spiritual reward that they want. We spoke about that last week. Yes. What's the question?
Is the first one someone that wants to do it lishma, and the second one not lishma, or is it different?
Exactly. First one is lishma. Second one is lo lishma. Exactly. And again, by the way, lo lishma means I'm doing it lo lishma, but there's one condition. Because there's a lot of people in university, they're learning Torah, and it says mitoch shlo lishma ba lishma. Through lo lishma, you'll come to do it lishma. But you see, there's professors and there's people learning Torah in universities, and their whole life they never come to become lishma, because the condition is you have to want to become lishma. You have to say, okay, I know that I'm doing this for the sake of the reward. I know I'm doing this for respect and for whatever the reasons are, for to reward. But I really would like to reach the place where I could be doing it for the sake of heaven and just because God said to do it. And I would like to get that way, and you'll get there one day because you want to get there. Okay? So we said the third one, so this is, they want, like we said, they want a spiritual reward. And these ones want, now this is where we're at now. They want success in this world. You want success in finance, you want success in society, you want success in health. Just so you should know, all of these things are doubtful whether you succeed if you don't pay attention, if you don't become aware of your actions and the service of Hashem. Everything is going to be kind of besafek. How do you say safek? It's a doubtful whether you'll be healthy, success, society, all these things, money. You want all these things? I'm just telling you that you need to be careful, because this is really what's going to do it. So now, let's go back to the big picture. The Ramchal said, if you want to motivate everybody, you need two things. This is what we said in the beginning. You need to learn two things, two concepts, and those two concepts need to be explained to different people based on who they are. What are the two concepts? Omek Hadin and Chomer HaAvodah. Okay? Chomer HaAvodah. So we said, Chomer HaAvodah means the severity, the seriousness of the service of Hashem. People have this idea that, like, with God, you don't have to really pay attention to the details. You need to, right? So, Chomer Avodah, like we explained last week, like I'm guarding a person that's guarding a soldier that's guarding a dog house. He's not really, on guard. He's relaxing, he's talking, he's not paying attention. But as soon as he understands, they explain to him, that there's a nuclear plant right under here. Mm-hmm. So suddenly he's not exactly, falling asleep. He's on guard. So he understands the serious severity, the importance, the incredible responsibility of being involved in the mitzvot and in the work of Hashem. So Chomer Avodah is explained to these two people, Shlemei Adat and the Pchutim. Here the Ramchal says, and that's where we are inside, Achehara lechol hamon, but the way to motivate the Hamon, the masses, Hinehu, and then Rav Kook said this generation, a lot more people are Shlemei Adat. Again, it's just something changed. There was a major change, and people are motivated by closest to God, by lishma, by wanting to really do good, by idealism, by it changed so a lot. If you're learning the book Orat HaTshuva and you're blown away, that's the book you need. Obviously. Okay, so now let's go.
So I tried to read Orat HaTshuva. Is there any good commentary on it?
My Rabbi Raviner has an incredible, very, very. I actually did a siyum. I bought it 4 years ago. I bought it on my birthday, and I said I'm going to do this within a year. It took me 4 years, and I did the siyum on this year on Simchas Torah. All my kids went away, and I had quiet, and I just finally sat down and hit the pavement and did the siyum. Now we got to start it again. But anyway, so Chomer Avodah applies to these first two. Now look at the Ramchal says, Achehara lechol hamon. How do you excite? How do you motivate the masses? Hine beinyan hasachar ve'aonesh atzmam. You have to talk to them about reward and punishment. Birot omek hadin adechan megia. So here you see omek hadin. Omek hadin. With the last group, we only talk about omek hadin. That's what motivates them. They don't care about respect. They don't care about olam haba, the next world. They don't care about feeling uplifted spiritually. I'm a simple guy. I don't, tell me, show me the money. Will this help my success, my health, my marriage, will it help practically? What will I gain from it in this world now? I don't care about the next world. I don't care about respect. I don't need that, I don't need respect. I don't need any my name on any building. Just tell me, right? So, adechan megia asher bemet ra'u lizdazeh ולהתחרד תמיד. Okay, so we'll talk to you in your language. You want to talk about how does this idea of reward and punishment work? So for this, the Ramchal says, I'm going to give you examples. Before we go into example, I'll give you examples from our fathers, our great tzaddikim, and the Torah tells us about the flaws of mistakes that they made. Our tzaddikim, our holy fathers, and our holy. It's not for us to think that they're they're just like us. No, they're not like us. They are 50 million billion miles away from where we are. But the Torah wants us to learn certain things. We don't have this concept in Judaism of saints that never did anything wrong. They did things wrong. And this just shows us how serious it is and how much you have to pay attention. Because even if these great giants were, you think they have so much credit that God should say, okay, don't worry about it. But we see that every detail of what they did, every mistake they did was held accountable for. Therefore, we want to understand how that should make us, motivate us to understand why we also have to pay attention to every detail. Okay? Now, basically, one more introduction before we read inside. The idea of reward and punishment, it makes perfect sense. Because that's what we're talking about. We see nature has a concept where if you jump off a roof, you can't say, oh, I didn't mean to jump, and then you'll go reverse. Right? Nature is very, very tough. There's laws. Laws is gravity. And even in the systems that we see that are built in society, there's governments, they make laws, and they're not. There's no place for how do you say, for forgiveness. It's just the way it is. You running up a debt, you have to pay. But I don't understand. When I stick my hand into the fire, I'll burn. But I could light a fire on Shabbos and nothing will happen. So maybe that means God doesn't care. You want to tell me, the Ramchal is in this chapter wants to tell us that the laws of the spiritual laws are just as, how do you say, abiding as the natural laws. You want to work, you want to live in this natural world and be successful in this natural world, so you should know the spiritual laws are exactly the same. So why is it that I do an avera, I don't see anything bad happen? I don't see any consequence? That we'll get to in a minute. But first, let's understand how there is no such a thing as God says, I couldn't care. It's not. I'm not paying attention to the details. God is, by the way, big philosophers also, they have no problem in saying that God created the world. But the big issue is that God is still sees and cares and is involved. They see God as like a president of the world. In other words, God he created the world and his name is on the building, but he's not involved. Right?
Watchmaker.
That's why it's very important that it says Hayad hachazaka v'hazroa netuya. Right? We saw his God when we left Egypt. We saw his strong hand and his outstretched arm. What does that mean? Strong hand means that we saw how God created the world. But outstretched arm means, why do I stretch my arm out? Let's say I have here a piece of wood. I take an axe. I stretch my arm out in order to then come down and to have an action take place. outstretched arm because I want to now bring it down. So what was revealed to us when we left the sea into the whole world was that God not only created the world, but he also has a goal for the world, and he's bringing the world towards that goal. Like we said, you should not have any other God but me. Lo elecha Elohim acherim al panai. What is that word in Hebrew? Acherim. Acherim comes from the word, when you learn Hebrew, acher. What does it mean to be leacher? It means to be late. What does it mean to be an idol worshiper? It means God decided the world is going to be good. You have two choices. Make it happen faster or make it be late. Make it happen slower. You can't stop it. Right? So we saw that God is not only created the world, but he's leading the world. He's guiding the world toward where he wants it to go. So all these questions are very good. We still don't have an answer. So therefore, why is it you're trying to prove to me that I should pay attention to the details because it's just like the laws of nature and the laws of this world, but I don't see it, and I don't know if I believe it. When we're done, then you'll tell me if you still think that way. So first, let's understand how there is no such a thing as saying God doesn't care about the details. How do we know that? Number one, let's start from Avram Avinu. Avraham ahuv lekono. Avram Avinu is beloved by God. It says in the Torah, Avraham Ohavi. It says straight out in Yeshayahu, it calls him Avraham Ohavi. Lo palat min adin. He was not given a get out of jail free card for him saying, Bameh eda ki erashena. How do I know? When God said, I'm going to give you the land, I'm going to bring you to the land of Israel, I'm going to inherit the land to your children. And Avraham Avinu said, prove it. How do I know that I'll inherit it? And whatever the reason was, whether he was saying, maybe my children won't be worthy of it, whatever the reasons were, God promised it. And he said, how do I know what's going to happen? God said, Ger yeh zeracha. I want you to know you'll be punished for that lack of faith. You will be punished, and your offsprings will be in exiled for 400 years. Maybe that's the answer to Avraham Avinu's question when he said, how do I know that they'll inherit it? Because maybe they're not worthy of it. God said, don't worry. The difficulty, the challenges, the 400 years of suffering will purify them. They will go through a whole process of cleansing, and they'll be ready. Don't whatever it is, but he got punished. Avraham Avinu, he made a covenant with Avimelech without permission from God, and therefore the Torah was supposed to be given in the time of Avraham Avinu. Ani mash'eh et simchat banecha shiva dorot. Because you made this covenant, right? You're signing a deal with our enemies that they can live in the land. You will pay 7 generations until we receive the Torah. Yaakov. So again, you have to remember, it's very important to understand. When the Torah mentions things that our fathers did wrong, it's these things they did wrong. It's not, let's come up with more ideas. It's calculated, and we're supposed to learn an important lesson from it, not to think any less of them, but to understand that the details matter. Even the people that are at such a high level that you think, who cares? They do everything perfect, so they made one mistake, just let it go. No, even this. Yaakov, he screamed at Rachel. She said, give me children. And he said, I think I'm God that I give you children? God doesn't want to give you, that's what it is. And God says to him, this is the way you talk to someone who's suffering. Kach onim et meukot. She's in suffering. You're supposed to give her comfort. You're supposed to encourage. Chayecha yubanecha omdim ifnei banei Yosef. The brothers will bow down to Yosef, and so on. And it gives here more examples of Yaakov. He didn't give Dinah to Esav. She was a holy lady. She could have brought him back and helped him become a good person. And he's like, no way, I'm not doing it. Look what happened with Dinah. Yosef, that talked to the minister in the prison, the minister of the drinks, and he said, Ki im zachartani itach. Please remember me with you. Was punished for 2 more years in prison. Wait, what's wrong with what Yosef did? He's in prison. He saw an opportunity. He asked the minister of beverages to remember him. What was wrong with that? You have to do ishtadlus. God wants you to do your effort and take control of your reality. Why was he punished? The answer is you have to always remember God has a lot of messengers, but it's not that person. It comes through that person, but it's not that person. And we sometimes we make a mistake. We're so sure that the messenger is the source. It's coming from him that we mix it up, and he made a mistake here. Right? In your heart, don't rely on him. God could send it in a million ways that he can get you out. Don't rely on him, rely on God. So on. So he brings, I'm not going to go through all the examples because I want to go through this chapter in this class. To be finished the 4th chapter. This is part 2 of chapter 4. So we see many, many examples that the Ramchal brings us of great holy people. Michal, King David HaMelech, Shlomo HaMelech, all these great, great people. You can look at that on your own. And so we see, God doesn't forget anything, any good act, any bad act. Right? We see very, very evil people that did good acts. And, for example, Elyon, he got up for God. He said, I bless you in the name of God. He stood up of his chair. He stood up, he respected God. Root came out from him. Moradoch, he walked 3 steps to walk out the rabbi, and he got his sons had 3 generations of ruling and being kings. Even though they were wicked people, but there's no such a thing as any good act or any bad act that does not come rewarded or punished. In other words, there's a perfect balance, and everything is very serious. And this is, people like to fool themselves, or maybe not people, maybe the Yetzer Hara, to think that God doesn't pay attention. God doesn't really care about the details, right? Like there's a story, the Maggid of Duvna, he was famous for his parables. He was the master of parables. And he tells a story once. There's a poor man walking down the street, and a very wealthy man comes and says, hey, come, I want to take you for a nice meal. Takes him to the fanciest, most expensive restaurant in the city. Tells him, order whatever you want. And they're sitting there ordering wines and meat, everything you could imagine, running up a bill of thousands and thousands and thousands. And then the rich man says to the poor man, 1 second, I got to run and get something. I'll be back in a few minutes. He leaves. An hour goes by, 2 hours go by, 3 hours. The waiter says, you got to pay. He says, no, the rich guy is going to pay it. He says, no, you ate and you're going to pay. So the same thing, the Yetzer Hara tells us, don't worry, God doesn't really care. It's on me. Go wild, do everything you want. You don't have to pay for anything. But then when we end up standing before the heavenly courts, we are the ones that have to pay. And suddenly it's like, oh man, it's not free? No, right? So make that assumption now, and not in the next world. By the way, I asked my rabbi a story this morning. I asked my rabbi a question this morning, Rav Shlomo Aviner. I go to the class in the morning, I asked him a question because there's a crazy Gemara in Kedushin, Pei Aleph. There's a story of a rabbi named Rav Amram Chasida. These women that were captured and they were taken out of captivity, they didn't know, where do we keep these women safe? So we don't want anyone to take advantage of them. They're vulnerable. They're coming from, a very difficult situation. So we said, well, take them to the house of Rav Amram Chasida. To be called a Chassid is like, not everyone's called a Chassid. That's a very spiritual high level, right? And they said, well, put him at his house because he'll guard them, and he's sick and he's old. And he put them up he put all these women on top on there was like a 2nd floor that you needed a ladder that 10 people could move. And he's sick and he's old and he won't be able to, nobody will bother these women. In the middle of the night, the neighbors hear somebody screaming from his house, fire, fire. They come into the house, they see Rav Amram Chasida himself. Halfway up the ladder, he moved the ladder himself, and he was halfway up the ladder to do things that he did not want to do. And therefore he was screaming fire, so the neighbors would come in and stop him. So I asked my rabbi, talking about motivation, again, these stories have very important, And they said, when they saw him running halfway up the ladder, they're like, Rabbi, you're embarrassing us. I'd rather be embarrassed by you and not be embarrassed when I go up to the heavenly courts. In other words, what was he using? He was using the motivation that we're talking about here. Embarrassment from people, his status, he was using this tool. So I asked my Rabbi, why didn't he use the tools that we talked about of the Shlemei Adat, of the people that talk about the oneness of God and completion and closeness to God and Shema Yisrael, God is one, and all the goodness in the world? Why is he using this tool of the punishment and the reward and punishment? So my rabbi said that, first of all, every level that you reach is based on a level beforehand. And you have to, he said, it's like you have a tank in the army. It's an old tank, but it doesn't run well, but it still runs. And you never know, suddenly you need it. So you build your new levels always on the foundations of the old foundations, of the things that are there. And sometimes you're not in that space. You need to also be able to pull out the like you have a car. You need to be able to pull the handbrake. What's it called? Emergency brake. Yeah, once you have it, it's there. But usually you press the brake is enough, right? But no, once in a while, in a certain situation, he needed to pull the handbrake, and so we learn a very important lesson from this. So basically, like we said, if the Yetzer Hara tells you, sin, do things wrong, and God will mochelach, don't worry, God, like we said, that story, God will forgive you. Don't listen to him. That you should understand, God does punish, and the punishment is also part of love. It's not that God loves you, he punishes you because he hates you, he loves you, and the punishments come also as comes from love. So here's the big question, and now we're going into a very important understanding, a very important, you could say it's brackets. Im ken, the Ramchal asks us, Hechan midat ha'rachamim. So wait, if you're saying that God is how do you say, calculating every detail. So, right, and he's so, how do you say, machmir and kapdan, and he's right, there's no getting off anything. So where's tshuva? What is tshuva all about? What is tshuva? So here the Ramchal, this whole chapter, like we said, will explain what tshuva is. וזה דבר פשוט ומבורר, כי הנה Hashem elemet. Tshuva is not, because tshuva could think to people, tshuva, as God says, do whatever you want, don't worry. Just like in other religions, they have the Christianity, you sin, you come, you pay some money, you confess, and that's it. You can go back and do it again, right? Like a little kid comes to the priest. I have $10. Do you have a sin for 10 that I can do for $10? Any $10 sins, right? So, therefore, what does it mean? What does it mean? What does it mean, tshuva? We have to understand tshuva in the correct way. And for this, the Ramchal now goes into explaining what tshuva is all about. He explains, I'll say it in a story, what tshuva is about. Im ken midat ha'rachamim, lama hi omedet? Kivan she'al kol panim. It sounds like as if God is like a machine to calculate my sins, right? The things I do wrong. No way. Kivan she'al panim tzarich ledakdek bedin kol davar. So where's the compassion? Where's the midat ha'rachamim? Tshuva v'adai midat ha'rachamim hi kiyumo shel olam shelo haya omed zulat dato klal u'klal. First of all, you should know, if it wasn't for there's something called. So now let's. I can erase this. It's okay. So basically, now we're going to explain what tshuva is. If we're saying that there's din, there's judgment, what we spoke about so far till now, there's din and there's chesed. Okay? Din says punish. Chesed says forgive. So what is tshuva? And this will also explain to us why is it that when I put my hand in the fire I get burnt, but when I light a fire on Shabbos, nothing happens. The answer is Rachamim. Rachamim is basically, in other words, God doesn't give up zero on din, and at the same time, full chesed. So I'm asking you a question. I'll give you an example. The Jewish people did the sin of the golden calf. The worst thing you could do, the rabbis say, it was like a wife on the wedding night. She was off, and they were looking for her. Where is she? And they found her in the other room with another man. On the wedding night, we just received the Torah, and we did this, the sin of the golden calf. So now, Midat Adin says, destroy them. Midat Chesed says, just let it go. How could God now make a win-win situation? How could God make a situation where they'll both say, I'm happy? How could it be? If Din says, destroy, Chesed says, forgive, just let it go. How in the world can God make a situation where both these things at the same time will be fully achieved? Din will get exactly what it wants, and Chesed will get exactly what it wants.
Well, by giving us time to repent, and if we don't, then we get in.
Exactly. Rachamim means time, means patience, means, for example, if I hear the Jewish people did this in the golden calf, God takes a huge stone and he's going to now throw it and destroy all the Jewish people. Chesed says, don't do it, just forgive them. Din says, throw it, destroy them. What does God do? Takes the stone, crumbles it into 1,000,000,000 pieces, and throws one pebble at a time. Every challenge and difficulty since the sin of the golden calf till today is one of those stones that takes place. In other words, not everything is hits you in one shot, but all of the difficulty, challenges throughout the generation. So that is what tshuva is. When you stick your hand in the fire, you light a fire on Shabbos. Why does nothing happen? Because God gives you time. Not because God says, I don't care. Not because it's not important. Not because, who cares? No, because God gives you this opportunity. It's like there's another beautiful story. We mentioned the Maggid of Duvna. I'll tell you another story. There's a guy that he meets his friend, and his friend says to him, how you doing? He says, I'm doing terrible. I owe a lot of money to this guy, and I don't have the money. Tomorrow is the payday. What am I going to do? Pretend you're crazy. He'll realize he doesn't get the money. Okay. Comes the guy to his friend. You have the money for me? He starts acting crazy. The guy says, oh man, I'll never get my money. He went crazy, and he leaves. A few days later, the friend who gave him this advice says, how did it go? Amazing. He asked me for the money. I pretended I was crazy, and he knows he's not going to get the money. I'm off the hook. Thanks for the great advice. And he says, well, what about the money you owe me? And he starts acting crazy. Right? So God gives us this incredible gift, the gift of tshuva, the gift of time, the gift of patience. But it doesn't mean, and this is what he says, what is tshuva? Tshuva gives you time to regret the act. In other words, who you are is your ratzon, your desire. I want to do this negative thing right now. If you can take out that desire, that wanting to do it, it doesn't make any sense, but it's the reality that God created the world. Tshuva is the only way the world can exist. It's like there's a wall here, but there's something in Hebrew, it's called hachana ledelet. They make, when they build houses, they make sometimes a wall, and there's actually an opening for a door. In other words, there's already the frame and everything. You don't see it, but it's just with very light. It's with blocks. All you need to do is a little hammer, and you break it through. There still takes work. God created the world with tshuva, this ability. It's the only way the world could exist because we're always making mistakes. We're not created in the way we're not going to make mistakes. Rav Kook says we're created in a way we have to be careful to do mistakes, and we have to do tshuva after we do mistakes. What does mean tshuva? So number one, who you are the desire, is your ratzon, is your thought, your intention of what you're doing. If you are on Shabbos, you lean back and you turn on a light, that's called mitasek. There was no desire of you thinking, I want to turn on the light. You don't bring a sacrifice. It's considered zero. You didn't do anything wrong. If you turned on a light because you leaned back, you didn't know there was a light there, you didn't do anything wrong because there's no ratzon, there was no desire. I don't want to go turn on the light. The ratzon, that desire, can be uprooted by tshuva, by a person going backwards and actually going backwards and regretting. And it's not, there's 4 parts of tshuva. Here the Ramchal says that what are the 4 parts of tshuva? So he said arichut hazman, giving you time. But what are the 4 parts of tshuva? Who knows? What are the 4 parts of tshuva? The Rambam says, and that's the Ramchal says here.
Vidui.
So vidui. Vidui means to confess. You don't talk to anybody. You don't go to somebody to confess. You say it in words. You bring it into the word. I made this mistake. I should not have done that. Nobody needs to hear it. It's between you and God. But you have to put it in words and confess. Vidui. We say it every day. Hashamnu, bagadnu, gazalnu. Part of that is I'm saying it in words. I'm taking responsibility. What else? There's 4 parts. Who else? So, basically, 1 is, so we said vidui, charata. You have to feel bad. It's not enough to just say, I did it wrong, but I don't feel bad. Right? So you have to charata, to have regret, remorse. 3, you have to have azivat achet. Person, right? You have to let go of the weapon. A person, right, is trying to shoot somebody. I feel so bad. I feel terrible. I tried to kill you. Put down the weapon. Azivat achet, like, right? Put it down. Or a smartphone going into pornography. I feel so bad. Yeah, but you still have the smartphone, right? What else are you going to do? Are you going to take any action? Kabbalah latid. Are you going to put a block on your phone that you can't get into pornography even if you want to?
What's the third one?
Kabbalah latid.
No, the third one.
Is azivat achet.
Azivat.
Drop the weapon. Stop doing it. Right? So these are the 4 parts of tshuva, the Ramchal says here. And so therefore, this is the greatest gift that God gave us. And this the Ramchal ends off saying, the chapter saying, V'nimtza. And here I just want to get back to Rav Kook. Tshuva chidush hachaim. The tshuva is the rejuvenating life. What's that?
What's the second one?
Second one is regret. Charata. Ani mitcharet.
So vidui, confession, charata.
Vidui, confession, charata is regret.
Regret.
Azivat achet is letting go of the stop doing it. Right? You could feel bad, but you're still doing it. You're not, so that you haven't done tshuva. And the 4th part is Kabbalah latid. How am I going to make it? What am I going to do for the future that's not going to happen again? There's like Einstein said, definition of insanity is doing the same act and expecting a different outcome. If you're going to do the same act, there's no reason why you're not going to go back to that. What are you going to do that the next time you're in the same situation, you're going to act differently? What are you going to do? How do you say? What steps are you going to take? Therefore, and we said, so tshuva is the greatest gift. It makes no sense. How do you say? Intellectually, or you can't understand it. I did an act. Now I could go back. And yes, you go back. You regret what you did, and you go back to the future. You go back to the past. By the way, there's a movie. I like Marvels. They're probably not good, but whatever. But there's this one of the Marvels. The first one is this guy which destroys half the world, and then the next Marvel is they figure out a machine to go back to change certain things that we won't be able to destroy half the world, and that's a Jewish concept of tshuva that time. If God God's name is past, future, present. Haya, in other words, past, future, present. We can't understand it. It makes no sense. What do you mean? How could you have past, future, present at the same time? If you're connected to God, you're able to be in that state of being where you can go back to the past in order to bring it into the future and the present at the same time. So the Ramchal says, Nimtza she'ein le'adam harotze lefakeach einav. If you really want to be aware and to have your eyes open, there's no pitui, there's no seduction, there is no temptation sheyuchal litpatot, that you will be able to be seduced or pulled by, levilti zeher, and not to be careful. If you want to, I want you to know there is no seduction, there is no temptation that you can't overcome by using one of these three tools based on your personality. That basically you need one of these three tools that you can make it through any challenge that there is, any temptation that there is, and you can overcome it. This is it. Like we said, we fool ourselves that God will forgive me. He doesn't care, right? God's full of compassion, but God is also din. God is also judgment. These are the outlooks that שישקיף עליהן האדם ויקנה מידת הזהירות ודאי עם בעל נפש הוא. If you're serious, if you are a thinker, if you want to think about these things, you will acquire this character of zehirut. Basically, we're finished. We finished the third. This is now. Oh, too bad I erased it. There's 4 parts. We finished the third part. The next part, right? The next part is the next chapter we're going to learn is the motivation part. The upkeep and the maintenance. Okay, you come to yeshiva, you're in a certain period of time where you were really becoming a careful person, and then there's 3 things. I'm giving you the coming attraction. There are 3 things that will make you lose this incredible gift of paying attention, of basically igniting your freedom of choice, of thinking before you do, of the wisdom of your life, guiding your life. There's 3 things that are going to make you lose it. And it's number 1. If you become a workaholic, you will lose it. That's a big danger that's always there. We talked about it. This danger of I'm in a crisis. It's an emergency. It's a matter of life and death. If I don't work, if I don't have money, then I'll die. Then I won't be able to live. So the Yetzer Hara, it's not a person. It's the desire for self-preservation that basically swallows up everything else in life. And people get sucked into this, especially in the high-tech world. The high-tech world, it's supposed to be the job that makes everyone's life easier and they have more time. And the people working it work more than any other people in any other position. They even have, in these big companies, they have the gym, the barber, the food. They want you just to live there. They don't want you to go anywhere. Stay here, right? Not because they care about you so much, because they want you to work from the morning till the night, and everything's here. You don't need to go anywhere. You have everything here. Your gym, your food, your blah, blah, blah. Everything's here. Your doctor, everything is right there. And then you just become a slave. And so the number 1 thing you have to, and we're learning how to deal with it. But the problem number 1, maintenance and upkeep number 1, do not become a workaholic. Problem number 2, be very careful about becoming a clown. People have a desire to fit into society. They want to be standing out. They start becoming cynical. They start becoming a joker. And the idea of seriousness in Hebrew, retzatzini, means ratzon Hashem. You have to see the will of God in everything. Everything has a will of God. There's a way that you serve God with everything in life. And you don't make a joke about anything. We're not talking about you could still be a funny person. You can make a joke. But this idea of becoming a joker, not seeing will of God in everything, making fun of everything, cynical, is something that people get sucked into. It's a big danger. That's danger number 2. Danger number 3 is who are the surroundings that you choose. What is your social? Who is your social group that you choose to socialize with. You worked so hard to become a thinking person, a person that is aware, that pays attention, and then you go hang out with people that are the opposite. You will lose it, because a person is his reality is to fit in. A person has a very big, how do you say, desire to fit in, to be like the people around him, and therefore choose the settings that you choose to mingle with, because you don't want to be with the wrong people. So that's just in case you don't make it to next class, or if you're interested in this, that's next week. So thank you, everybody.